Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, as always powered by our friends at Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 138th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you very much for listening. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my Bruins and NHL writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal, so go to bostonsportsjournal.com and check those out. With me today, longtime friend and colleague, Mick Colageo. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
I blog games at rinkwrapmc.com and link to them on X and Facebook. And I consult with Boston Hockey now, and who knows if we'll start writing again with them. But I just filed the Money Power issue of the hockey news on the Bruins. So that happened as well.
Nice. So everybody check that out for sure. Let's also thank our sponsors, as always, our friends at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Also thank all of our friends at Game Time. If you want to get Bruins tickets, hockey tickets of any kind, concert tickets, any kind of venue tickets, go to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, of course, but download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
Game time. Thank you, Game Time. All right. Mick, let's get into it. 4-0 loss on Tuesday night to the Toronto Maple Leafs for the Boston Bruins. All right. First, let's talk about the reaction after the game. Jim Montgomery talked about they were better 5-on-5, better defensively, liked to play 5-on-5. They drew some penalties as a result of better 5-on-5 play, so they had some power play chances. But basically, this game was a massive and monumental special teams breakdown and a discipline breakdown again. A lot of bad penalties, Mick, in this game, I thought. A lot of avoidable penalties. Yes, there were penalties on both sides. Both sides were going to the box. It was kind of a power play fest. But most of the Bruins penalties were offensive zone penalties. Several of them were way away from the play and had nothing to do with what was actually going on. I felt like this was another example, and we've seen this all year long from this team, of extremely undisciplined play, and a lot of it was coming from their best players. I think Pasternak, Marchand, and McAvoy all had offensive zone penalties. I think McAvoy had 2 offensive zone penalties, if I remember correctly. That's your leadership that's taking these undisciplined bad penalties. They still lead the NHL by a wide margin with 74 minor penalties. That's 12 more minor penalties than anybody else in the league. 175 penalty minutes. They continue to go to the box. They allowed 3 power play goals. Their penalty kill is ranked 20th in the league. They've been top 10 pretty much always. And now they're 20th, and they're giving up a ton of power play goals in addition to taking all these bad penalties. So it's the toxic combination of lack of discipline, and then the penalty kill can't actually bail you out. And then they go 0-for-6 on the power play. They're 29th in the league. I think they're scoring at 13% efficiency on the power play. The power play has been awful this year. It hasn't helped them out. And certainly going 0-for-6 and watching Toronto score 3 power play goals last night, they just got outclassed special teams-wise. So my question to you is...
Without Matthews.
Exactly. No Austin Matthews. Did you see anything last night that made you feel this was any different than what we saw in October from this Bruins team? Because maybe they were a little better 5-on-5, but I saw a lot of mistakes and the issues that we saw through the bad play in the early going against Toronto again last night. And it tells me that it hasn't exactly been, 2 steps forward to this team. It's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
That would be a good formula if they could sustain it. 2 forward, 1 back.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're not playing every. They're not going to be playing the Flyers and the road-weary Kraken team back-to-back all the time this season, which is a big part of it too.
Bingo. So it's going to get and with Calgary coming in, it's going to be another test. I think what we saw last night my takeaway is that the Bruins were chasing that game a lot.
Yeah.
They don't play well against speed that has cohesion. And the Leafs, not only when they're dancing with the puck and passing it well because of the skill they have, but from a defensive standpoint, their back checking was really good. And the Bruins really had a hard time just making connections, not because they were just playing poorly or playing out of sync like they were earlier in the season. I just think that this is the scarier reality, that they don't have much offense against good speed-based defense. They are chasing the game and trying to make things happen. And I think a byproduct of trying so hard to make things happen is you wind up taking scrapey penalties in situations where there was either too much adrenaline or something happened too fast and you're not used to playing at that pace.
Or you're just chasing the game, Mick. That's when you take penalties too, when you're chasing.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit of what we saw. I don't think I've seen a Toronto team that's played this well in sync with its goaltender in a very long time. Stolar is obviously a big goalie, but there's a lot of big goalies. This big goalie seemed to have great chemistry with his defensive team, and the Bruins had a hard time trying to figure their way through that and generate quality chances. Everybody was rushed. The scouting report is obviously out. Pasternak gets the puck. Make sure you got a guy on him to throw another guy at him, because he's going to twist, he's going to turn, he's going to try to surprise you, and you're not going to shake him loose. You got to make sure that you keep take away his options, because he turns over the puck if you do that to him. So I think he's going through a growing pains area here now that he's made a great impact in the NHL over the last couple of seasons in different ways. It's now harder for him to do that this year, especially, now the team's kind of keying on him. They're less afraid of Marchand, although Marchand has played better hockey of late. I don't know if he'll ever be that guy who can, pull a goal out of his butt when the Bruins need one. I think that phase of his career might be over. But I do feel like he is playing a better brand of hockey, closer to who he is as a player. And but I do think the rest of this team is struggling. They're chasing. It really reminds me of the Bruins of the early 80s when they were a terrific team with Peterson and Middleton and Kruchelniski and Fergus and Peter McNabb still. And they just had so much. Crowder. And then like in 1 year, from 83, 84 to 84, 85, all of a sudden they just suddenly had such a hard time trying to keep up with the game and produce, and it just, everything changed. And it makes me wonder what the long-term effects of this season will be. And if the Bruins are playing cohesively, they look to me like they're doing a lot of things well, and they can sing with the choir at this level of hockey, but breaking through that glass ceiling and trying to make something happen and shake up that game and score a goal. It's a tough patch right now. That this is going to be a hard season. It's going to be a lot like 09-10, where offense is hard to come by.
Yeah, I think it will be to some degree, and definitely until they bring in another legit top six winger type. I think you're right. I think they're not going to overwhelm teams with their offense many nights. That's simply not going to happen. Not that kind of group. All right, let's take a break from the show to talk about our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you'll watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and it's super simple. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Which ones are lighting the lamp? Which ones are trying to do the Michigan? You can figure out all that stuff using Prize Picks. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. And don't forget about the goalies being red hot and standing on their head either. Don't get dazzled by all the highlight reel goals. Think about your goalies too. Let's see a little goalie love in this hockey world, especially at Prize Picks. All right, this week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the hockey board and selecting Nathan MacKinnon for more than 0.5 goals. and Evander Kane for more than 1.5 hits. Evander Kane running around, throwing the body at people. Also, David Pastrnak for more than 2.5 shots on goal. Not necessarily goals right now, though, because the Bruins are struggling. And Sidney Crosby for more than 0.5 points. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. What could be better than that? You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. But like this, they do have enough talent, Mick, to operate on special teams and to excel and execute and to play better on special teams than they should not be 29th in the NHL on the power play. They should not be 20th in the NHL on the penalty kill, given the personnel they have, given the coaching they have, given what they've done in the past. That's not about as much about, not being able to break free, not being able to keep up pace with another team. Like that's a little more coaching, I think, and execution when you're talking special teams for this group, especially with the talent that they have on those units. They can put their best players on those units who can compete with the other teams and break through and get plenty of goals. So, when you look at the power play, when you look at the penalty kill, what do you see right now? Because there's a lot of the same players on the penalty kill. They should be better than they are in the PK. And I know they're going out there more and getting a lot of work because of the penalties they're taking. But that's an area they simply have not been close to good enough. And it's lost them a bunch of games here when it never – I can't remember the last time the Bruins penalty kill was bad enough that it lost them games.
Or it wasn't elite. It's always top 5 in the league. And now it's like suddenly way pedestrian.
Yeah, and that combined with a power play that's just not doing anything, even though they have the talent to be able to do it. Like there's something there beyond like they're not as fast as they once were or whatever. These other observations that we're making. Like there's something else going on there.
I'm not buying into the Bruins are slower. I don't see that. I just think that they're maybe the sample size just isn't big enough for them to have found the traction they need to find as a unit with integrating new players into it and deciding how they're going to do things and those players learning and being on the same page as far as everything goes. And the fact that Charlie Coyle has been such an important player and only recently has he started to play Coyle-like hockey. So, if you look at the
weekend, question about it.
Look at the body of work over the course of the season, it's starting to come out for him. It's coming out for Marchand. So you expect so then you look at last night and you say, okay, so what was that about? And the only thing I can think of right now is that Toronto without Matthews kind of simplified. And I don't know if the Bruins didn't have the data to properly prepare for it. And adding Riley to that, they were a 5-forward power play prior to, as far as I know. And so I think that this is something that Berube is probably going to have to look at and say, let's keep him there and figure out another way to integrate Matthews. And I think of this in reverse moment here. If I'm the Bruins, I'm looking at Mason Lowry and thinking, I think it's maybe time for a radical change here and let Charlie McAvoy focus on his 5-on-5 game and have Lowry. Let's integrate him. And I know he scratched last night. He scratched multiple times this year. And granted, he's on a learning curve. I get that. But if you're talking about
that's 2 in a row, I think, for Lowry, wasn't it?
Not sure. It was 2 out of. It was certainly 2 in the last 3.
Yeah. So, I don't know that he played Sunday against the Kraken, did he?
Maybe not. It might have been a different kind of setup that they had. Because Peak is back in last night. Peak sat down, I thought, for one of these recent games.
Yeah, he did, but he was hurt.
Play much.
He was knocked out last night.
So they lost him early on the Pacioretty hit. So, I haven't heard more about that. But one of the social media guys said that Pacioretty got an elbow or a stick to his head or something. And
no, it looked like it was head con, and it was tough because Peak was kind of hunched over.
Yeah, I kind of thought the way he went into him looked almost harmless. But maybe he got him where there's no protection right here.
Yeah.
and that maybe there was something there.
But Peake's head was down low too. That was part of the problem. Is he was kind of hunched over towards the boards.
Yeah,
where he was almost at elbow shoulder level with Pacioretty, and it was definitely an unfortunate.
a little bit like that Ovechkin hit on Carlo right before the playoffs some years ago.
They probably could have called like contact to the head, like that 2-minute minor that they do sometimes, the checking to the head or whatever. They could have called that one and given him 2 minutes. They ended up calling a 5-minute major initially and then waved off the whole thing after reviewing it on video.
Well, that's the process.
Yeah, and it was fine. Like, it could have been a 2-minute penalty, but I also think it wasn't like predatory. It wasn't, I think, purposeful or anything like that.
No, Pacioretty, though, I got to say, he was nasty last night overall. He was hitting other guys borderline kinds of hits. I just think that he's, every time he sees black and gold, he wants to pay back 2011. So.
Probably, and I think probably too for him, like having a veteran tryout for the first time and going through that whole process, he probably realizes that like he's going to have to really bring it in all areas in order to keep his spot on a team.
Yeah,
he's kind of like, anytime those veteran players get to the point where they're kind of looking at their mortality when they have to go the veteran tryout route in training camp, I think it probably changes their view of their role, of how they're going to stay on the team, of what they have to do to stay, like all that stuff. It probably changes their approach and their mentality in a big way.
There's a tennis player named Bernard Tomic, who has immensely talented, weird style of play, but really a talented player. He used to started out in the limelight, but then he faded. His compete level was off, and he just was really, overthinking. I don't know what was going on, if he wasn't fully committed to his career. The guy keeps hanging around. He's like spent 10 years bouncing around and continuing to show up at low levels and losing the guys you never heard of. And you say, what is he doing here? And I've sort of felt that way about Pacioretty for the last several years. It's kind of like he's hanging around the NHL, and every team that wants to take a flyer on him is kind of like, well, let's see if there's anything left there. Maybe we can be the team that's the spark and brings back the old Max Pacioretty. Nobody seems to be doing it, but I got to say, in a diminished role, he seems at home with this club. So I think it's a good fit. So right now the Leafs have a chemistry that the Bruins have a hard time playing against. And Stolarz certainly is able to predict, anticipate, and be big right when it matters most. And so right now I think the Bruins are searching for offense, but I kind of agree with Monty. I think that I think the byproduct of chasing the game and chasing teams is making the occasional bad penalty and trying too hard. And as the competition gets harder, the resolutions that you recalibrate, and now you got to be better. And so what was good enough then won't be good enough now. And so I think the Bruins have still got the makings of a very good hockey team. But it's just going to be one of those seasons where it's going to take a while for it to emerge. And if they do survive the season and get into the playoffs, then who knows? Maybe it'll all be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. As far as Pacioretty goes, I mean, he had a couple of Achilles tendon injuries in there too. So, that's played a big role in him sort of bouncing from team to team. Those are very serious injuries, and he's had it happen to him twice. So that's pretty significant. But, he's just at a point where, he's older, with production down now, he's in desperation mode to prolong his career, as a lot of those guys are. Like Tyler Johnson last night's in that same mode now too. Played in his first game after the Bruins signed him the other day. Thought he was fine. But Max Jones goes on waivers. Riley Tufte already sent on waivers. Those you expected to see once they signed Johnson, that Jones was going to be on waivers. That would likely be a corresponding move there, and it was. And I think it's the right move. I think Johnson can help them. It's going to take him a little bit, probably a couple games to get really up to speed, even though he's been practicing with the team. But getting back to your initial point with Monty and assessment of the game, all that stuff, I agree to a point. And he's at a point now where I thought it was interesting again last night, where he took accountability for the coaches needing to be better along with the players after the game. It was noticeable that he said that. And I do agree with him that it was better on 5-on-5. But when he was asked about the penalties, he really soft pedaled the answer and was like, maybe there was a couple of bad penalties, but we had a power play chances. And man, they took a lot of bad penalties. I thought they took a lot of poor penalties. Penalties were bad judgment penalties, just lack of discipline penalties. And to me, the lack of discipline on this team that's been chronic all year, that's been problematic all year, that's been an issue all year, combined with the special teams play and the way it's been all year, those are reflections on coaching. Like, those are two of the biggest areas that coaching has an impact on a game, is the discipline and the ability to stay out of the penalty box and the special teams part of it. Like, that is a lot of where the coaching comes in and has a significant imprint on a team. And I'm sorry, but that's why I think there's going to continue to be a magnifying glass, a microscope on Jim Montgomery and what's been going on at the beginning of the season. Yes, the Dogs were put off a little bit with 2 wins back-to-back over the weekend, but I think you can very much say those were kind of like conditional wins, but you got to look at them a certain way, because the Flyers are just not a good team. Like, the fact that they lost to them the time before that was ridiculous. When you're watching the game, you could see the Flyers were trying to give it to the Bruins, and they just didn't want to take it. So they get that win in Philly. And then the game against Seattle, road-weary team where they caught them, it was a good game. They played well. But I think you got to look at those through a certain perspective as to who they were playing and how they won those games. And I take a bit more from this game against Toronto on Tuesday night and the mistakes, the chronic mistakes that we continue to see this season. And I say, like, where is the coaching in all of this, where these kind of issues are problematic? This is the areas where coaches can impact the game the most, and they are failing in these areas time and time again this season. I think it's an issue.
I see it as a byproduct of them playing against a team that plays faster than they do. And I feel like all season long, anytime they were in a game against a team that plays faster than they do, they were more prone to this kind of a mistake. So I do think the fact that other teams play that much faster than them, that is the part of the coaching end of it that scares me, because I don't feel like the Bruins are a slow team.
Right.
And so I look at that and I say that I'm looking more at that as the root cause, the chicken and the egg. And coaching is obviously a results business. If they outshoot everybody 90-1 and they go 0-10, the coach is getting fired. But I agree with you, and that's what will be on the gravestone if they lose, if he loses his job eventually here, because they can't sustain any success in the results column. Then it's going to be about that. That's going to come up. That's going to be said, and that's going to be one of the focal points of them. But I do feel like a prerequisite to them achieving the discipline that you're looking for is to play at the pace of the faster teams in the league, because that's something that's always been a priority for Don Sweeney. In fact, let's dial back to the acquisitions of July and the signings, and everybody said, boy, Donnie, those are some big players you signed. Well, I wanted to get guys who could cause anxiety on the forecheck. I was going for speed. They happen to be big. That's what he said, and he doubled down on it. He said it over again. Cam obviously acknowledges the bigness as being purpose related, but Donnie refuses to go there. He'll hold steadfast to it being coincidental. So, in that regard, without the focus on the big, but the focus on the speed, where's the speed? Oh yeah, so Kastelik, Koepke, 2 of the guys. Jones obviously didn't get a good start with the injury. Tufte, not quite at that level. So those guys are out of it for now. But Kastelik is such a blue ribbon success.
Yeah.
Koepke is.
He also, I got to say, he also did take a bad penalty last night, Kasterlik. That penalty away from the play late in the third period of a close game, not a good penalty. That was another one. Yeah. Just senseless.
Yeah. So there's stuff there to work out, but I don't know. I'm not quite looking at that, and I can't isolate it from them being a slower team in these games. Those are the games where I see it happening.
You know what team Boston sports fans are most excited about this time of year right now? It's not the Patriots, definitely not the Red Sox. I mean, there's plenty of Bruins fans that are very excited about the Boston Bruins, but I've got to tell you, I think the team that everybody's most excited about is the Boston Celtics. They're excited about NBA hoops coming back. They're excited to go to the Garden and watch the Celtics play, defending that world championship, and watching Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and all of those guys that they've loaded up on on their roster. And you know where the best place to get Celtics tickets is, to get tickets to the Garden, to see basketball games? It's our friends at Game Time. Yes, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets by using the app, by getting your tickets through the app. It's the most exciting time of year for a basketball fan. Just look at all the features on the Game Time app. I love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Who detests, I raise my hand, surprise fees at the checkout? Game Time is not about that. They are about showing you upfront what the cost of the tickets are. I am all about that. You can get seat views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy the tickets. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. If you're looking for Celtics tickets, Game Time is the place to go. You got to take the guesswork out of buying tickets for the Celtics. And oh, by the way, you can get Patriots tickets, you can get Bruins tickets, you can get concert tickets, comedy tickets, whatever you want. But we're talking the Celtics right now. You can use all of those things at Game Time. So create the Game Time app, go to the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app. It's super easy to use. Create an account and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today for all of your Celtics and NBA tickets, folks. What time is it? It's Game Time. Special teams, discipline, these are coaching things. Like this, that is a reflection on the coaching, big time. Those areas, like, yes, you can say they're playing slow, other teams are playing faster than that. Maybe that's part of it. But I think those specific areas are always reflections on coaching, special teams and discipline. Those are two big areas that if they're not reined in, players aren't being reined in by the coach, and they're not executing and they don't have a good game plan to what they're doing special teams wise, and they're getting beaten by other teams, I think it's a reflection on what the coaches are doing or not doing. And I really think, when it comes, if it continues to repeat and you continue to see the same thing over and over again, I think that's when your hands are tied and you have to make a move with the coach. If it's the same consistent problems over and over again that aren't getting addressed and aren't getting fixed, then that is proof positive. That is the evidence, piece of evidence you need to present to anybody to say, like, we need a change in voice here, or a change in strategy, or a change in what we're doing and thinking with this team, because, like, we're not learning from any of the mistakes that we're making.
If the brass is sitting down and saying, do we agree that, Donnie, Evan, Cam, do we agree that we're better than what we're showing? Why? And if they agree that they're a faster team than what they're showing, and that they're a more disciplined group of players than what they're showing, then they have to look at the body of work and say, is this thing going to turn around? And as soon as they start feeling like they're in danger of losing the season, you don't spend the kind of money they did in the offseason, make the bold trade of Allmark the way you did in the offseason, and add the things you did to this team, and then tolerate a season that winds up being a spacer season because you can't work out things that a new coach might be able to influence. That's usually how a coach loses his job.
For sure. And I also think if they were going to make a move with the coach, it was not going to happen last weekend when they had back-to-back games and they were on a road. That was not the right time to do it. They're in the middle of a stretch right now of 5 games in 7 days through this weekend.
This will tell us a lot.
But I believe after Saturday's game this coming weekend, they have 2 days off. So if things don't go well this week, I think that is a very logical time to potentially think about making a move with the coach, where you'd be able to bring your new coach in, have a practice with the new coach, and then sort of focus on moving ahead. I think if they're going to make a move, it would logically come, I think, at the end of this week, and we'll see what happens.
And you get some tough competition coming in, so
yeah. So it's going to be tough. Like, there's no doubt about it. But that is something to watch. All right, Mick, Kevin Weeks, our good buddy Weeksy, who maybe we'll have on the podcast at some point. I hope. He's a great guy.
Yes, he is.
Tweeted yesterday, in speaking to sources, several teams are interested in penning UFA after the season. Trent Frederick. With his size, speed, toughness, character, and skill, he's drawing attention in the marketplace.
Of course he is.
This is somebody that we talked about. Mark Diver mentioned it, I think, last week on the podcast when we were talking about, potential moves or players that could get moved. And I think he's the guy that probably would get you the most on the market and would garner the most interest around the league because he's one of those sort of like, productive players that's also a power forward that can drop the gloves that a lot of teams don't have and would love to have. Kind of the unicorn player that there's not that many of them out there in the league. What thoughts on this, the potential that he could get moved? I don't see it happening because I don't think the Bruins are going to do it unless they really decide they need to shake up the roster instead of like making the coaching move. Maybe this would happen later on if they continued to struggle after they replaced coaches. Maybe that's something they would look at, but I just don't see something like this happening. But the only other part of it is maybe they feel like they can't afford Frederick and they don't want to lose him for nothing at the end of the year, which might be a reality for them.
I don't see Frederick. I think a lot of the Sharks are circling because they saw what happened with DeBrusk. He went into a contract year, and crickets were coming out of Boston. And they're thinking, okay, this guy's going to go to market. There was probably a lot of DeBrusk talk during the season about, trades, the people trying to get him undervalued from the Bruins because they know the Bruins were conflicted about how they felt about him as a long-term core player. So in Freddie's case, it's no secret that Cam wants more players like Freddie, not fewer. So I think that, the Bruins also, he's a late first round pick. The Bruins want to shore up their sense of we draft and develop. So the fact that Freddie's in a contract year, I asked him during camp how he feels about this. And I noted that, hey, I am sure that the St. Louis Blues are salivating as they try to recover their 2019 mojo. They know they lost their way. They know they tried to go too much for skill and not enough for toughness. And now they're trying to reacquire that kind of player. I am sure you are at the top of their list. And he's kind of like looking at me like, well, is there a question there? And I said, well, you happy? You want to be here? He goes, I want to be here for the rest of my career. I love it here. And so, and it was totally heartfelt on his part. So, and at the preseason presser, at the executive presser, I asked Donnie almost at the end of it, because he was already getting hammered with questions about players. And I said, Trent Frederick's coming in. He's going to be UFA at the end of the year. If you don't, has there been any discussion? Oh, we want me to give you my whole Rolodex here. And then he said, no. He goes, Freddie, we have talked. Yeah, there are talks going on. So he indicated there were extension. Then he gave me a little wink when he was done, kind of like, I just think he felt a little shell shocked with what Cam had to say about the whole Swayman thing that day. And I think that, so he was a little under fire there and thinking, man, I've spent all this patience to trying to say nothing and accommodate the media's needs to discuss things. And then all of a sudden Cam goes, boom, So I think that the Bruins I don't think he'd lie about that. So I think that this is what he said. I believe him. Freddie wants to be here. I believe him. I don't see either side being unreasonable in this point. And I do think that, that they value him. It's not going to be about, well, you produced this, so we think this. I'm sure that plays into it, but when you're in a UFA year, it's real simple. It's he can go anywhere he wants and play for anybody he wants, and I'm sure the Blues would be overpaying by more than $1 million a year. They would overpay, and so the Bruins have to be respectful here and accommodate him as best they can. But I do think that he's got to be here. The middle has been always been the quirky part of this team, and if they see him as a solution and not a problem to that middle, then it's time to act on it.
Well, he's definitely not off to the start that if he wants a big contract or wants a big raise with 1 goal and a -8 in the first 14 games of the season. Trent Frederick has struggled in a big way to start this year. Maybe the contract and some of that stuff weighing on his mind is playing a role in the way that he's playing. But I do, Mick, to your point, I kind of knew Jake DeBrusk was not coming back. I got that sense from the first time that I talked to him at the beginning of last year that he was gone. In fact, I think he joked with me. They like sold the place he was living in or whatever and was like homeless for the year. Yeah. And as soon as he said that to me, I was like, all right, he's not coming. He's already cashed out in his place. Like he's ready to go.
The writing was on the wall.
They weren't going to be able to afford him anyway. So it was very obvious that was not going to happen. Frederick, I do agree with you. I think he probably wants to stay. I do think there are teams that are going to overpay for him. I do think he would have excellent value on the trade market, and the Bruins should explore that if they feel like they could get a great deal from somebody else and get value for him instead of losing him for nothing, as they did with DeBrusk, who clearly that absence now of DeBrusk's speed and playmaking is showing and is hurting the Bruins. And I think Frederick's absence of the big, heavy player that he is, the willingness to drop the gloves, the stuff that he brings to the table, just the size.
He can be a center and a wing, and they love that.
Yeah, and all of that is highly valued and would be missed if he was gone. Now, do I wish Trent Frederick would play like a big, mean power forward all the time and more often? Yeah, I think there are times when the switch you wish was constantly on, and it kind of goes on and off sometimes with the way that he plays, but that's tough to do. It's tough for anybody to do in this league, is to constantly play like that all the time. And I think that is hard. And I certainly acknowledge that. But I do think, there's something to other teams being interested in the Bruins if they get to a certain point. And like I said, if they decide they need to shake up the team, because I think the coaching thing is going to happen first. I do think they're going to make a coaching move at some point. I just feel it. And I think that will be the move that they hope is going to be the impactful sort of like shake the team out of whatever's been going on this first month and get them moving in the right direction. And maybe it goes beyond that if they continue to sort of falter, where the Bruins have to look in the mirror and look at the roster and say, maybe like there's something wrong with the way we put this together. And, there's a flaw in this team that needs to be addressed. But I think we're far from that. I don't think that's the first move that's coming. They're not making a trade.
No, people talk about players, and that's the wrong way to think about this. Now, you did the player thing. They just did it. You move Olmark, you make Swayman the number one, you get a capable backup, and now you say, we reconstituted our goalies. We got our defense the way we wanted. We added Zadorov. Now we got Lindholm in the middle. Now we think we're a contender. They go out there and they stink. And so you say, okay, what the hell's going on with this group? Well, it's really weird and ironic that all the incumbent players, top 10 in their lineup, nobody played well to start the season. The way one of the things that I've been concerned about is Morgan Geekie. Morgan Geekie was a player who the Bruins took, who Seattle discarded, did not offer a Group 2 RFA contract. They let him go, and the Bruins said, wow, let's grab this guy and see what he's got. And so they did, and it worked really well last year. This year, Geekie's been a disaster. He's thinking, and when you think, you stink. And so I think that Monty was hesitant at the beginning of the season to give Freddie and Geekie a line and say, this is your line, this is your role, this is what you're doing on this team. He clearly did not work on any chemistry issues with them other than to say, these are my two guys that I can rely on to put anywhere I need to fix something. Because of their versatility, I can play them up, I can play them down, they will help wherever they are. And I think Freddie has been methodically getting his game together and getting better as he goes. Geekie is in and out of the lineup. He is nowhere near the player he was last year. And that is really concerned right now. They got to figure out how to reintegrate him to this team, because he was a very effective player for him, the Bruins on the walls last year.
Yeah, I agree. He's one of a number of players, and Frederick's one of them too, frankly, right now, that really needs to step up their game. A bunch of guys are still struggling.
Well, you think of losing DeBrusk, you've lost all three to an extent. Right. You certainly lost Geekie, and now you're starting to get Freddie back now.
Yeah.
And
you lost your entire third line, basically. But they need to start getting better. No question about it.
When you're a grinding team, you gotta have continuity line to line to have cumulative pressure. And that's not there.
No, definitely not. Mick, thank you very much for your thoughts. Let's thank our sponsors. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also thank the good folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase of any kind of ticket, sports tickets, comedy tickets, concert tickets. Terms do apply, but download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time decision because it's game time.
Game time. Mick Colageo, thank you very much for joining us today, my friend. And please thank the leaf blowers outside as well. They made a nice cameo appearance there at one point. I love it.
Yeah, they did.
Hopefully they will be gone soon because the leaves are coming down. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. We appreciate it, and we'll see you at the rink.